Thank you very much. Again, thank you and welcome. You know, it was about, I'm going to say, a year and a half, almost 2 years last time I was here talking about a similar presentation. And in preparing, I was saying to Lynn beforehand, I could sort of tweak it to some of the more trending observations and make it a little bit more present as it is today. But I will say the one common theme since last presentation almost 2 years ago is that our healthcare system is letting us down more and more as our population ages. So as Lynn mentioned, I have this show on CJAD 800. It's a 9-year anniversary this month, as a matter of fact. And life is indeed unrehearsed. We're throwing these curveballs in life, and the show is about trying to provide resources and good guests and knowledge just to help people in their life and throughout the aging process. But time and time again, this topic of aging in place or potentially transitioning and what to look for to stay at home longer, or if it is time to move, always resonates with our listeners. So I've kind of turned this into a road show now, going across the city in different parts about this very, very topic, because it seems to be resonating with a lot of people, especially these days as our resources get thin. Waiting list, the emergency rooms, you know, you've seen disastrous, 12, 16-hour waits, long wait times to get CLSC services either at home or waiting to get into a long-term care home. So we're finding that the general public is really starved for information because the healthcare system is there, it works the way it works, but we need more. All of us need more, and we will continue to need more because the aging population, quite frankly, is growing faster than what governments are able to provide. And that's not just here, by the way. I'm part of national organizations, and in Ontario and BC, no matter who you talk to, I have some people say, I'm going to move to Ontario, it's better. It's the same across the country. So that's why I'm very pleased to be able to present, and thank you, Lynn, and your team to present and hopefully get you a little bit more information to help you out. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our aging population, how to effectively age in place, talk about some transition trends that are going out there, both in private and public, and then I get a lot of questions about how to navigate the public system. What do things cost? What if I have to go private to augmented? I'm going to be addressing a lot of this for you today. And then at the very end, a quick little downsizing tips. It's always a fun little part at the end if you are considering downsize. Some of you may have already downsized. It's a process. But if you haven't and are considering it, there's a few little bullet points that I'm going to talk about, some downsizing tips. We'll wrap it up with some Q&A, both virtual on Zoom and in person. And I do stay behind afterwards. You may have some personal questions that you may not be comfortable asking in front of a group, so I will stay behind to answer any one-on-one questions afterwards, okay? All right, we've seen different statistics, but basically the next 20 years, we'll see the fastest growth of our population aged 65 and over. In fact, there's a 50% increase in the growth over the next 20 years. Just interestingly, the next 20 years after that, you'd think it'd be even worse. It's not. It's only about a 9% growth. So what's happening now, the next 20 years are crucial. The boomers are reaching over 65, and this is why it's crucial to be talking about things like we're talking about today. Now, what to do? Do we age in place or age at home or downsize? If you ask on a poll of Canadians, 95% of Canadians saying, I ain't moving anywhere. I'm staying home. I don't want to move anywhere. So that's the will of many people. Actually being able to execute that may come with challenges. And at one point in time, you might want to consider downsizing. So I'm going to be addressing everything. Basically, we're going to go through an aging process journey together. Some may be applicable for your situation today. It may be applicable for you down the road, or it may be applicable for a loved one or a neighbor that you know is going through some things. So hopefully there's enough in this presentation for addressing all of that. We're going to start with what do we need to do to age in place? We obviously want to enjoy our home, our condo, our apartment for as long as possible. And what we do as we age, normally we don't need any services at all. Now we might want to start getting some housekeeping services, very popular. Good luck trying to find a good cleaning person these days, not easy. That's one of the most demands I get actually in my world, working with adult children and seniors. Some of us get the landscaping done or the snow removal obviously done, or we can. Home maintenance and repairs. I'm going to talk a fair amount about the burden of home ownership, and home maintenance and repairs become more bigger issues, and try to find the maintenance guy or the person also becoming challenging for us. Even groceries and pharmacy, the pandemic as we all lived was really difficult on many people. There's a couple silver linings that I'm going to talk about in this pandemic. One of them was the increase of online services. We would have never thought 5 years ago, I'm going to order from my IGA or Metro online. Would never do that. Now this is very commonplace. You go to a senior living community and you've got the IGA truck and Metro truck there all the time, all day long, delivering. Pharmacies are coming in these blister packs, or they're delivering to your home. This is all little things to help you age in place longer. Now, one of the things you want to do as we age is you want to make sure we're creating a safe and secure environment. I just talked about the basics over there. Now we're going to go to the next level. How do we create that safe and secure environment? So we have some basic home modifications. Some are simple and inexpensive. I'm going to talk about that. Some are heavier duty renovations. For example, if all of a sudden someone is in a wheelchair, to access your home, you may need to get a ramp. You may need wider doorways. You may need a chairlift. These are heavier renovations as well that will help you age in place. I always like to suggest, and I don't know if you've ever had an occupational therapist speak, but occupational therapists are excellent. They will come to your home and do a full analysis of your living accommodations and point out where things can be improved. Okay, and I'm going to talk about some of these more popular recommendations by OTs, occupational therapists, and some very good ideas worth the expense of hiring an occupational therapist. If you can get it through the CLSC first, fantastic, but good luck. It's going to take a while. But if you can't and you would like to do that, know that there's private occupational therapists that can do a really good job of assessing your situation. All right, here's some of the simple modifications we could do at home. Where's the biggest chance of slips and falls in a home? Bathroom, right? These grab bars are getting more and more popular. More companies are specializing in going into the washrooms and other areas and putting in these grab bars. And I just want to emphasize, a towel rack is not a grab bar. Okay? Because you're going for a little fall if you're grabbing on that towel rack to keep you up. Okay, so grab bars are right into the wood, and much stronger. Could also be put into the shower area, outside the shower area, near the toilet. Grab bars is a simple way to help prevent slips and falls, make you feel more confident or a loved one more confident. This little night light, whatever, dollar store, $4 or $5, whatever it is. I throw that in there because one of the biggest areas and times of falls is getting up in the middle of the night because you got to do a little pee and you got to go. Well, what happens when you get up in the middle of the night? One, you're probably lightheaded. You were just sleeping. Two, it's probably dark. So we encourage just a little investment of a night light. Always good. Get that lighting out there, especially if you've got some people that will go to the washroom in the middle of the night. Okay? Lighting is very important. You know those good old pull rugs on the top left, I don't know, on Zoom you could see this as well. Some of us have been on trips. Some of us love our rugs and our matting, and they tend to do those little rabbit ears at the end over time. So our recommendation is get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Easier said than done if there's an emotional attachment to them. So if you insist on keeping them, get in a double-sided tape. Okay, get someone to get that double-sided tape, get them fastened to the floor to avoid those little tumbles. On the bottom left, we've got these shower benches. These exist. You can get them from medical equipment stores or CLSCs, and it helps with transfers, especially if you've got a bathtub. Okay, big trend in getting stand-up showers. Not so easy to get stand-up showers and converting a bathtub to a stand-up shower. So if you have a bathtub, these transfer chairs are actually very convenient. Handrails and stairs, always important. If you have the ability to put double handrails, one on each side of the wall, even better. Stairs become an issue as we age. And I'm going to talk a lot about multi-level stairs, and that's one of the reasons why people are getting out of their houses. And raised toilet seat helps you with your transitioning. That's also becoming quite popular. Never a fun topic to talk about this stuff, but this is real life, and we see these all the time, and it really helps with the transitions. Okay, those were just a few simple modifications. I talked about some of the major renovations as well. But one of the things that's important, especially if you're in a couple, or even if you're alone, do we have the ability to provide proper care to enable you, to allow you to live at home longer? Okay, this is a very important topic. How do we get proper care? Well, most people are tapping into family. If it's a situation with a couple and a spouse is helping the other one, okay. If you're alone, maybe you need to rely on family members, adult children that will come in and help out. Maybe neighbors would also come help. We've got the CLSC, that's our public healthcare system, to help with home care. It's there. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail. Really stretched to the limit, though. The CLSC is. Budgets are being cut. Population's getting older, hard to get CLSC services, and if you do get some, it's quite minimal. Private home care, some people are getting CLSC services, but it's not enough. It's people in and out, caregivers in and out, and some people are going the route of private home care to augment CLSC services. And then caregiver support, probably the most important one. I've seen too many, we'll call them superheroes, because I could do it, and I don't want to bother family members. I don't want to impose on people. It's a very common situation we see, and now we run into caregiver burnout. And we see the caregiver getting sick before the person being taken care of. So caregiver support is getting more and more important as our healthcare system is failing us. So what's picking up the pieces? Yes, the private sector is to an extent, but also a ton of community resources that are there. You might have been talking about this at the Atwater Library, but just some examples. You know, we've got the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal, we've got Alzheimer's Group, AGI, we've got Cummings Center, L'Appui, L', Appui is online, phone calls for caregiver support. 211. Okay, hard to get through to. I'm not talking 811, which is more for medical needs. 211 is to provide you resources in your area. A lot of people don't even know about 211. I happen to be on the board of Nova West Island, but there's Nova in Montreal, there's Nova in West Island, there's even Nova in Hudson. Great resources, many of them free of charge. And a bunch of them. Contactivity in Westmount, New Hope in NDG. My wife and I just presented at the Carrefour des Aînés in Pierrefonds. Over 100 people showed up over 2 days. They have 1,000 members of their senior center. So know that there's more and more demand for support. Tap into your municipal, your community support centers that will help the lack of our healthcare system. So that's called caregiver support. Okay, now we're sort of going along here. You know what? I need help at home. Let's start with the CLSC. Okay, so to get access home care services, you need to go through the CLSC. Typical CLSC services that you will see: weekly bathing, medication management. What we mean by that, particularly for vulnerable people, if you've got some neurocognitive disorders, you're living alone, you might have Alzheimer's or other dementia-related diseases, CLSC will come in to help with medication management. Hugely responsible and important. You want to be taking the right quantities at the right times during the day. So the CLSC will come in and do medication management, literally in and out. We're talking 5-10 minutes, but medication management is one of them. Sometimes they'll come in and help morning prep, get ready, evening prep, helpful. And I also want to point out something called chèque emploi service. Not a lot of people know about this. The CLSC doesn't really advertise this too much, but what it is the government's recognizing that the resources are stretched thin. It's hard. They can't get labor even to help out. So chèque emploi service means a CLSC person is going to be doing an evaluation, and they will assign a certain amount of hours per week, and you get to hire the caregiver. So it's a way of helping you find your caregiver who needs to be more than just in and out, and they'll pay a certain amount of hours subsidized, something to the tune of $20 an hour through chèque emploi service. Now, you're not going to get a lot of hours, maybe 10 hours a week, but many people don't even know about this. So I always want to put this up when I do my presentations, that something like chèque emploi service is there. All right, so that's our public system. We also have many home care companies. I have a home care company called Premier Home Care. There's lots of options out there. You can expect some certain daily and minimum requirements through private home care, certain amount of hours per day or certain amount of hours per week. One of the things that really differentiates from CLSC is that you will get consistent caregivers through private home care companies. Why is that important? Particularly if you have a loved one with some neurocognitive disorders. It's very disruptive. If you're someone with dementia or Alzheimer's and it's advancing, and you've got a CLSC person, a different person 3-4 times a week, it's disruptive. So the one advantage here is some people ask us, hey Matt, we need a consistent caregiver, someone that's going to create that bond with mom or dad or ourselves. I'm going to throw out a lot of dollars and pricing out here, so by the way, the presentation will be made available, right? So don't worry about taking a lot of notes. You're going to have all this available to you. The going rate for private home care is between $37 to $40 per hour. This is PAB type services, meal prep, companionship, personal care, management, laundry. That's what the going rate is. And I would also want to point out the government recognizes there's not enough home care. Let's support it. In fact, it could be up to 40% on your private home care bill that the government is going to pay a tax credit. So it's substantial. It's not 5%. So if it's just to give you an example of $38 an hour is what you would pay a typical home care company, the government kicks in 40%, you're now at around $22 to $23 an hour. Still a lot, but certainly helps out. Okay, so need to know that there's some good government money there. One other thing, and this was one of the new ones since my last presentation, just simply because people are asking us. There are many situations where people are cash poor and house rich. Okay, they've got their house, it's been paid for, but they're living on a pension. So more and more people are tapping into something what's called a reverse mortgage. So to give you an example, I'm just going to pick, if you own a condo or a house that's worth $600,000, just to pick a number, you could tap into that value and get a reverse mortgage, even if you only need $20,000 or $30,000 to help you live at home longer. So reverse mortgages are becoming quite popular as a tool. It's very popular, by the way, in the rest of Canada. For some reason, Quebec, their guard is up when they hear reverse mortgages, but in the rest of Canada, reverse mortgages are quite popular. Why are you going to use that? Number one reason is for home health care needs. Let's say you had to do that major renovation. You needed $20,000 or $30,000 to do that major renovation. You don't have that, so people are tapping into a reverse mortgage. Unexpected expenses. Some want to augment their lifestyle, and they're sitting on this asset of the house. Home renovations I just talked about, and if you have difficulty obtaining financial options. Okay, so know that some people are doing reverse mortgages or taking a line of credit to live at home longer to delay a transition. All right, so we're going along our aging journey, staying at home as long as we can. Now, you've got some question marks. Maybe it is time to downsize. So here are the things we hear from people that have done downsizing. But just a quick show of hands. I'm sorry on Zoom, but in person, has anyone downsized from their home down to a condo or a smaller? Okay, couple people. All right. Why are people downsizing? So I've just thrown a couple examples out there. Number one reason is usually physical, mobility. And if you're navigating stairs and you got multi-level homes or a townhouse, it's becoming too much to do those stairs. So physical, we're seeing that. Going in and out of the bathtubs. You have a bathtub. No, a walk-in shower would be much better. Another reason, physical. Cognitive reasons, a little tougher. Physical, you know, if your mobility, it's hard to walk. Cognitive usually progresses over time. It's not like a broken hip. You get surgery and you need a few months to get back. Cognitive, dementia, Alzheimer's, starts slow and will progress. Sometimes it becomes a little too much to live at home. So we're seeing cognitive reasons why people are downsizing. Another big one, okay, we've got the caregiver stress I referred to earlier on. It was just becoming too much for the caregiver. Safety and security is a big thing. We've got wandering, we've got flight risks, we've got these stairs again, security issues. We want to get rid of those stairs. We saw this a lot in the pandemic. This really came out. But perhaps you may have, a spouse has passed away, or you're alone. Loneliness is another reason to downsize from the big home or the big condo to a more appropriate environment. And we get this a lot. You know what? The house is just becoming too much. The roof is leaking, the pipes aren't working, we have to change electrical, and you get fed up. And the burden of home ownership is just becoming too much. The question now is, okay, I'm thinking about downsizing, where do we go? So I'm going to address all our different options of where do we go. Starting with smaller homes, condos, and apartments. I'm going to talk a little bit more. Some will go right to a retirement home. And then the last stage is the bottom one, a nursing home, if care levels are really high. Those are the three types of downsizing, and I'm going to address each one here. Some people will downsize to a smaller home or a townhome. We actually don't advise townhomes because by nature, townhomes, they're not this. Townhomes are this. You might actually be adding another floor in a townhouse. So if your issues are mobility, you're obviously not going to go to a townhome. We're seeing the one-level smaller homes getting popular, downsizing from a regular home to that. However, most people are going to a condo or a 55-plus apartment. The difference is, condo, there's condo fees involved. An apartment is you have no worries about condo fees. It's just an apartment. So we're seeing a big trend in these 55-plus apartments. I've yet to see a 55-year-old in a 55 apartment. Okay, but it's generally people 60s, 70s, 80s that would be in those types of apartments. Some people like that because they have the freedom. It's a one-year lease. If for whatever reason it's not their thing, they just try to look somewhere else. You're not locked into long-term. All right, if none of those are appealing, what is very popular is moving into a retirement home. And there are different levels of retirement homes. In Quebec, you see RPA, Résidence Privée pour Aînés. The government loves acronyms. I'm going to be talking a few more acronyms, but RPA is Résidence Privée pour Aînés. That's a retirement home. Okay? And there are many different types. Some are considered independent living. Essentially, that's condo living in a more secured environment. The dining room will be there. There will be nursing staff. There will be pull cords. You're not feeling well. 24/7 living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom. You've got these pull cords. You're not feeling well. Someone will see you. There will be more activities, common areas, usually a pharmacy or a convenience store. But you have your kitchen, and you could do your own meals, or maybe you do meal coupons, or you get a meal a day in your rent. So that's what we call independent living retirement homes. Next level is assisted living. In assisted living, you're usually going, sometimes it's a floor in an independent living building, sometimes it's a smaller home, but assisted living, you're going to get your meals, you're going to get your laundry, you're going to get your housekeeping done, you're well surrounded with personal care. So that's what assisted living is, usually up to 3 hours of care. And then there's memory care. We're seeing actually a bigger trend of residences and retirement homes specializing in memory care. Staff that's been trained in memory care. The Netherlands and those countries over there are way ahead of us on memory care. And we're starting to get some of those features. So there are some that specialize in memory care, how to redirect exit-seeking people, wanderers. The exit doors it's a scenery, it's a picture of a forest, and so this is like specialized memory care. So there's a fair amount of those as well. The next level, another acronym, this is the public system, CHSLDs, we've heard of that, Centre d'Hébergement de Soins de Longue Durée. CHSLDs, okay? Those are what we would know as nursing homes. Usually, so this is in the public system, I'll talk about that, usually more than 3 hours of daily care. Pretty heavy care. If you're in a wheelchair, you need help with full transfers. If there's incontinence, you may need help with feeding. Now we're talking nursing home type care, heavier cases of dementia or Alzheimer's, okay? So that's our public system. Some of the benefits of retirement homes, I'll fly through these. I've mentioned a couple of them. Number one, by far, is social benefits. Healthy living and proper care, particularly if you're living alone, okay? Or if you're a caregiver of someone, you will have a better situation there. Atmosphere and environment. The difference between living at home, which is fine, versus in a retirement home, there's usually stuff going on. There's a little more energy, there's more stimulation. So this is a big reason why people are going to retirement homes. Safety and security, as I mentioned, you've got the pull cords, the buttons, you're not feeling well. And we get back to this famous, you don't have to worry about a thing in a retirement home. There's something wrong in your apartment, it's being taken care of. I'm going to talk about some costs in the public system, and I'm also going to talk about costs in the private system. So these are private retirement ranges, okay? And you're going to see there's big ranges. I'll explain why. In independent living, around $1,500 to $3,500. Why is there such a discrepancy? It starts with the size of the apartment. There's studios. That means you don't even have a one bedroom. It's a studio. Everything's there. The next one up is a one bedroom, and the next one up is a two bedroom. Every time you bump up a room, it's $700 to $800 about. So we've had some situations where someone's coming from a house and they'll say, Matt, I need that second bedroom because my daughter lives in Toronto and she comes in a few times a year and I'd love to have that bedroom for my daughter to sleep in. No problem. But let's do the math. You're paying $700 to $800 more for that second bedroom times 12. It's almost $10,000 a year. So I tell you what, you put your daughter up at the Ritz-Carlton every time she comes in, and you treat her, and you're going to save thousands. Okay, so just bear that in mind. That's why there's a discrepancy. The other reason why the next level that creates cost is, do you need a meal or 2 meals a day, or I just want to use a coupon because I'm just going to treat myself to the dining room on a Friday night, and I'm going to do most of my cooking. A meal a day per month is going to be $450 on average. Okay, so it's 30 meals a day. You get your government tax credit on that, so it's actually a little lower, but just to give you an idea why this discrepancy is so high. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, meals or no meals. Assisted living, you're already getting your meals, you're getting your medication management, you're getting your care, much more labor. This is why it's between $4,000 and $6,000. There are some assisted living high-end that can run you $8,000, $9,000, and $10,000. Okay, but that's what you're going to be looking for assisted living. And memory care and long-term care, big range, $5,000 to $10,000. But there are some private long-term care, big dollars. But there are a couple, not many. The government didn't shut down all the private CHSLDs, but there were about 33 of them in Quebec. Now they're down to 1 that has remained private. All the other ones are now public CHSLDs. You can't get into them as you could privately. You have to go through the CLSC. So there's less options for private long-term care, but there are a couple. I talked about this tax credit. In private, you're going to get 10 to 15% of your monthly rent back every month. So just to pick a number, $3,000 per month, expect to get $450 per month every month from the Quebec government. The government's realizing there's long waiting lists for long-term care homes. We better support the private retirement homes. So there's some money in there. Other things to consider if you are moving from a home or a condo that you own, well, now there's no more taxes, property, school, water taxes. They're all gone now because that's included in your rent. No more hydro and gas, hot water, that's all included. Many of them are including your cable and your phone and your internet and your home maintenance, a roof, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, the home maintenance that you might have to budget every year also disappears. So bear that in mind when you're looking at a potential downsize. All right, we're going to switch now to what are my public options. I mentioned Centre d'hébergement et soins de longue durée, CHSLD. I first want to point out that these are nursing homes. There's no such thing as a public retirement home. Okay? Our public system is only long-term care. CHSLDs, the level below CHSLDs is called the ressources intermédiaires. Still high levels of care, but the government categorizes it into two. Okay? RI is a little less care than CHSLDs. Those are the two long-term care options. And again, we're talking usually more than 3 hours of daily care. How do we access a public nursing home? None of you are at this level, but I always want to point this out in these types of presentations because it's good to know for yourselves, but I know every time you're thinking of someone too that might benefit from this information. So, in order to get into public residence, you have to go through the local CLSC. And what they're going to be doing, admissions are based on priority. You need to have a CLSC social worker to do an evaluation, and you will get a score. It's usually a score on 0 to 14. And that's how they grade whether you can get accepted into the public system or not. Usually scores of 8 above, you will now qualify to get into a public system. It's based on priority. It's not first come, first serve. And I'll give a real-life example. If you have a 97-year-old woman living alone in Montreal West, full-blown dementia, versus a gentleman, 84 years old, pretty heavy physical care, his wife lives with him, well, who's going to get the higher priority? And I agree with that. As a taxpayer, it makes sense. It's based on priorities, not necessarily first come, first serve. There are long waiting lists. Plan on what the CLSC does, by the way, is what if you qualify, they say, here's the list of residences in your geographic region. Select usually 3 of them. And when the first one becomes available, that's where you'll go, or your loved one will go. We're planning on about a year to 3-year waiting list now to get into the public system. Talked about Ontario. There's about 10,000 people on the waiting list for an RI or CHSLD in Quebec today. There's about 50,000 on the waiting list in Ontario. Their waiting lists are 3 to 5 years. Okay, so as terrible as it is, 1 to 3 years, it's a bit relative as well. What happens is you will either have to stay at home and augment some support while waiting, or there's these transition beds, which is like a nursing home. That's a transition, a temporary bed while waiting until your name gets called to get into the permanent bed that you've chosen. I put good care in here because this presentation, pre-pandemic or during pandemic, that would not be there. Another silver lining of the pandemic was it showed all of us, all Quebecers and all Canadians, how weak and fragile our system is with our elderly. All right, so I will say now, is it perfect? No. You still have to be there, be eyes on the prize, check in, but you will get good care in the public system. Much better than pre-pandemic. Okay, they're under the gun, the staff is under the gun, but you will get good care. So I don't want to give the messaging that public system is still terrible as we saw in those terrible, terrible days during the pandemic. It's actually quite improved. Here are the costs In the public system, this is as of January 2026. They change every year, they go up by inflation. An individual room, $22.42 a month. That's everything, all in. The only thing that's not included if you wanted to get your hair done or have a physiotherapist privately or a massage, those are private services, but this is all in. Your care, your laundry, your cleaning, your med management, all that for a private room. 2 beds in a room is $1,872. Usually transition beds are going to be a shared room scenario. And 3 beds or more goes down to almost $1,400, but there are very, very few 3 beds or more scenarios now. Since the pandemic, they're recognizing air circulation is important. So you won't find many on the island of Montreal where you're going to have 3 beds or more, but I wanted to put that in there. That's there. All right. Again, we're going along our journey. And the public CHSLD is more general information. But let's say you're getting to a point, I think it might be time to downsize. So here's some tips to help you with the downsizing process. Why less is more? Number 1 rule. You could start downsizing now, even if you plan on moving in 4 or 5 years. Okay? Always start early. And less is more. By the way, the less is more is some decluttering. You know, sometimes people quiver when they're thinking of their place, and I do it for my business. We do have to declutter. It's going to serve 2 purposes. It's going to give you a little peace of mind after you finish a major decluttering. But if you do have to sell, the buyers don't want to see clutter. You're just driving the value of your house down. So start that process of decluttering. Less is more, and starting early. 6 months rule. We're in Canada. Don't throw out your shovels and your boots. However, if you haven't used something in 6 months, question it. Do I really need that? And if you don't, sometimes you have to part with it. 1 room at a time. If we've seen it time and time again. You start a little bit in one room and you start a little bit in another room, and next thing you know, you've done 4 or 5 rooms, the garage and the basement, and the decluttering is actually worse because you've got stuff all over. Do 1 room at a time and create 3 piles. Yes, I'm going to need this when I move. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. It's the maybe pile. No, I don't need this. I don't need it. Rule number 1, get rid of the no pile that same day. And don't go for a coffee or a tea break, because what you're going to do, you're going to think about what's in that no pile, and you're going to convince yourself that maybe this item might have to go to the maybe pile. Okay? No pile, out the door, as quick as you can. And now, where can it all go? We get this question a lot. We always start with family and extended family. And this is always a sensitive topic because we're generations. And some people have spent a fortune. The generation that we're talking about now, the boomers, came from nothing. Worked so hard for that huge dining room set and the huge bedroom set that the kids don't want. And it's not going to fit in where you're going, or your Royal Daltons and your all the souvenirs and the memories, and you spent a fortune on it, and it's emotional. Don't be insulted if the kids don't want it, because the kids probably don't want it. They might want the memories, the pictures, and the frames, but this is something we see, and it's tough. What do you mean you don't want it? But that will probably happen. Think extended family. Maybe you know a neighbor, a friend. Maybe they have a student going to Ottawa, going to law school, and he'll take anything, a couch, a sofa, a lazy boy chair, a desk. So think of extended family. After that, there's estate sales that are getting popular. I always like to point out, though, and again, these are tough conversations, your goods are probably worth less than you think they are, and you've paid a fortune, and it kills you. But if you're going to get 10 cents on the dollar with that estate person at your side, and you say, "What? You're kidding me," that might be the case. However, there is a chance to get some money from estate sales, okay? Estate sales, though, you have to have a fair amount of good quality merchandise for estate sales. What's usually more a better way that most people are doing just to get rid of some stuff. Garage sales. Now we've got Facebook Marketplace. We've got Kijiji. A lot of seniors may not be comfortable with technology. Get the grandkids involved. Get the kids. They're good at that stuff. I just put something up on Marketplace, and I'm 60. Like, I'm still not comfortable. My daughter did it all for me. She took a picture, and it sold in 2 days for something that wasn't worth, $50, But get the kids involved. After that, donations is another option. In fact, donations sometimes supersede estate sales and garage sales because you're giving a second life to someone. Refugees, first-generation immigrants, you're helping out, your donations. I'm on Nova West Island, as I mentioned. Nova West Island provides free nursing care services to the public. Where do we get our funding from? Nova thrift shops. There's 5 of them. We totally rely on donations for that. So donations are quite important, and there's a bunch out there. After we've done all this exercise, family, garage sales, estate sales, sold donations, if it's still there, you've got to discard it. You've got to discard it. And that's sometimes the hardest part of it. My wife gives an example. She's in real estate as well. They did a garage sale, a couple. And she had the tough conversation with them, and they agreed, we're going to just put the garage sale. There was tons of merchandise. And the problem was the stuff wasn't selling as quick, and sure enough, the husband wanted to get rid of everything. Usually it's the other way around, quite frankly. Usually women are more, the wives are usually, okay, we can get rid of it. In this case, it was the opposite. She would be sneaking stuff back into the house while he was negotiating for something else, okay? And then my wife went back to, there's like 6 or 7 items in the living room, and the wife was like this, and she just couldn't part with it, So these are the tough conversations. The 1-900 got junk. There's eco-collect. There's organizations that will actually refurbish things, and you just need to discard it. I think that is it. I mentioned, just for your own knowledge, I have 2 organizations. The home care company is Premier. You've got a lot of home care chases. Liana's actually is a free service for families if you're looking to transition into a retirement home. Completely free service. We've helped thousands of people in Montreal, where we help narrow down the best choices and accompany you on these tours. And I think we have a little time. I don't know how we're on timing for Q&A.